Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon your location. The purpose of today's discussion is to provide a perspective on the controversial Indian farm laws, which have met with widespread opposition and some serious protests. To discuss this, we have two respected panelists, Professor Pritam Singh from Oxford Brookes and Mr. Sidhu from Ground Zero. I'll briefly introduce them. Professor Pritam Singh is a very well-respected and widely known academic who is known for his knowledge on a broad range of issues, including economics, federalism, and is a regular contributor to newspapers, both in English and Punjabi, as well as many media channels. Welcome, Professor Pritam Singh.
Thank you. Most welcome. Thank you.
We also have with us Mr. Sidhu, a prominent young activist, a former attorney, who also has had a successful, who has a successful acting career, which presumably is on hold for now. So Deep has been in the thick of it since months and is currently on the outskirts of Delhi, near about, right on the border, along with the farmers and their hundreds of thousands of supporters. Welcome, Deep.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Myself, I am Dr. HS Dhillon, a university professor of neuroscience, and I'll be moderating this session as a citizen journalist. So if I may start with Professor Pritam Singh. Professor, if you could please summarize very briefly the three new agriculture laws, including their agro-business and corporate connection, and why they are considered regressive.
Well, there are three laws which were first brought in as an ordinances on the June 5th, and then very quickly passed through the parliament and approved by the President of India and became acts in September. The first act is basically about pricing and trading. And the second is about contract farming. And the third, which is Essential Commodities Amendment Act, it is about storage. They're all very interconnected, though the emphasis is slightly different, but they're all very interconnected. The important point about the first one is that it doesn't say anywhere that there is a minimum support price, and that has been the demand of the farmers. Now, the background to the minimum support price is that when India was food deficient country and there was a terrible problem of possible famine occurring in 65 because there was a massive drought in 1964-65. Then the Indian government was completely shattered and they were absolutely question of survival. I've discussed this in greater detail in my book, Federalism, Nationalism and Development, India and the Punjab Economy, providing the background evidence. And they argued then that achieving food self-sufficiency is absolutely necessary for our survival as a nation. It was a national question. And at that time, the American agro industries, they were also inventing new techniques. So they are also interested in entering the field. But at that time, certain areas of the countries were chosen for what is called the Green Revolution technology, to increase output by using high-yielding varieties of seeds, fertilizers, and irrigation. Whole of Punjab was chosen, Northern Haryana was chosen, selected districts in Kerala, West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Delta districts, and Western UP, they were chosen. And this led to increase in productivity, and India became self-sufficient in the early 70s. Now, for quite some time, the policymakers have been shifting about this, that our aim of food self-sufficiency has been met. We have enough food. In fact, India now exports rice, and it also exports wheat, but generally damaged wheat, And we need to take benefit of this, that we need to have enter the international market as a competitor. And it's also at the same time in competition with China. China has enormous amount of competitiveness in the manufacturing sector. And India cannot compete with China in terms of manufacturing. So some of the policymakers were saying that let's compete on agriculture. And how do you compete in agriculture? By reducing prices. And they thought that way to reduce prices is to remove this threshold, to remove minimum support price, which is a protecting price, and let it be pushed down by the market forces. So that was the first, motivation behind this. Contract farming was to allow private traders, big agribusiness traders, to enter the market, which was in these three states, Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP.
Mhm.
It is done through the agriculture produce marketing committees, where there's a regulated market under the state law. And they wanted to introduce big traders who will be outside this, and they can also trade. And they were being provided various incentives that they will not have to pay any cess and fees, while those who are in the APMC Mandi, they have to pay fees, and that fee is used for rural development. And the purpose was that more farmers will come to this, and eventually APMC markets will not be able to compete, and they'll be destroyed, and they'll be total open to agribusiness corporations. And they had an integrated network. They had integrated network of procuring these food grains, processing these food grains, transportation of these food grains, building big silos. Adani is the pioneer in that, and has built, I have seen one silo near Moga myself in Dagru, and there are similarly four. One is Sapamwali village, near Firozpur. One is in Kot Kapura, other is in Barnala, but there are certainly much more. So that was to be able to procure that whatever had been bought in the market, and then use them at any time, and also capture the export markets. The export market is huge. The rice exports from India is massive, and they have an eye on that. So that was the third. The Essential Commodities Act was to support the second one. That the Essential Commodities Act was that the certain commodities were called essential, that no one could store beyond a certain limit. It was illegal, and the government actually used to conduct raids on traders who might be holding that. So they removed that limit so that those silos could, being built by Adani, they could store as much as they wanted to do. So that's where the agro-business corporations come. And it is not only the Indian agro-business corporations, it is also the international one. Cargill is coming in a massive way. It is the biggest agro-business entity in the world. And it's the second biggest trader even within India. Indian government is the biggest trader at the moment, but they want to obviously take over that. And Ambani is also associated because Ambani is in trade, in retail. So they will be able to buy products from the farmers and then sell through the retail market, and that's linked up with the telephone network, telecommunication network. And so one was strengthening these agro-business corporations. And these agro-business corporations are very, very close to the Modi regime. Both are Gujarati, and they fund the BJP. The Adani had given massive amount of assistance to Modi during the Gujarat riots. And it was a plan of the state to use the state power to help them. So that was one dimension. The second dimension was they wanted to weaken federalism. And third was to weaken regional identities. And the weakening of federalism and regional identity was so that the power is concentrated in the hands of the center. So the states do not have the power to intervene in this process and in any way bypass these acts. So that was the purpose. And that is linked up with the political project of Hindu nationalism, that they do not think that there should be other linguistic identities, because those linguistic identities can weaken overarching Hindu national identity. So the purpose was centralized power, centralized economic power, centralized identity. So Hindus don't think in terms of Bengali or Tamil or Malayali or Odia Bengali. They should think only in terms of the one overarching Hindu national identity, which was opposed by the regional political parties. So there are three sections which are opposing. Farmers are opposing because of those, the protection being removed of the minimum support price, and the states are opposing because federal rights are being taken away, because government revenue depends upon the part of the government revenue in the state level depends upon the cess or the fee which they collect from agriculture produce markets, and that will go away. Regional parties are opposed because regional identity is being threatened. So that's a combination of this. But farmers have been in the lead. They have taken it in a major way, and in that sense, it is the biggest political challenge which BJP has faced since it was elected first in 2014 and then re-elected in 2019.
Mhm. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for explaining quite a handful in such a nutshell and so nicely. Deep, would you like to comment on how these ordinances were moved in haste rather in stealth under the cover of a medical emergency?
See, Professor Saab was just explaining how these three ordinances, the way it was introduced in the Lok Sabha and then in the Raj Sabha, and then President has given his assent, and it became a new legislation and a law. So when we look at the whole discourse, you'll understand that it's kind of a conspiracy theory. APMC, which is our market structure, established market structure, which in itself needed some kind of reforms, but they never looked into it and no reforms were ever made. Instead, they introduced a new scheme for the same program. So over here, if there are two different schemes running for one program, when it comes to the market structure or the trading, only which is more efficient is going to survive. So we all know how corporates work. We all know they work on targets, they work without emotions, they have profits, that's what they look at. So it's very capitalistic kind of system. So then definitely the APMC Act or the APMC which is there, the market space is not going to survive beyond probably couple years. Second, they want to control the produce from farm level. So they can actually go and take the autonomous structure of the farmers away by telling them what is to be grown, how it is to be grown, and what kind of quality they need, without considering the ecological literacy. So to control the retail sector, when first they'll control the market or they'll dilute the existing market and have a different scheme running over there, then they get into the contract farming by taking away the autonomous structure of the farmers and their actually way of living. Third, what they've done, like Professor Saab was explaining, Essential Commodity Act. So the storage or the hoarding, they made it legal of the essential commodities. So today there is no limit that all these corporate companies, they can come and like all these big silos are there, they can store as much or what they want to, whatever their capacity is, they can increase their capacity. So from produce to the shelf, not only retail market is controlled, because retail market is in India is huge, and that's what they're eyeing. They can also control the prices of the crops. So after a certain period, what happens? It's a simple principle in economics of demand and supply. So they'll control the supply, so they can probably have demand going up and coming down, and then accordingly they can have the decide the prices of the crops. Today, the policy they're implementing, what they are doing, they're threatening the farmers, they are threatening the ethnicity and the regional identities, and they are also taking the power, which is a state right, I would say, in Indian constitution, agriculture, or they are taking that policy making power when it comes to agriculture, education, or any other state policy where state should decide. They're taking that away as well, and they are centralizing it. So, like Dr. Saab was actually elaborating on it. So I would agree with him that all why there is such diverse participation, because farmers are protesting, they are feeling threatened, not only in terms of MSP, but also in terms of that their autonomous structure is going to be taken away and their lives will be controlled, their way of living will be controlled, and it will be defined the way corporates or the government wants to define it. Second, the regional identity or the ethnicity, which they are going to, because the whole formula of the nation building, which Delhi or the center have, when they do not consider the diversity in this nation, or they do not consider the minority existence of in this nation, and they just trying to assimilate or eliminate all those diversities and the minorities. So that's another aspect of this policy which they have introduced. Third is definitely that they're concentrating the power and wealth. I would say power will be accumulated, or they are accumulating power, or they are concentrating power only. uh, First they are making it centralized, and then they make it personalized. So it goes to the center, it goes to the parliament, and in few hands, and over there it is personalized only Prime Minister Modi or Mr. Amit Shah. These are two main names, I would say, that they control the power in India. So states like Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Maharashtra, when it comes to power policy making, they hardly have any rights in India at the moment. So Indian Constitution, actually, it's not federal. It's a unitary form of government, which can never, in today's time, serve, uh, you know, the diverse uh, interests in such a diverse nation. So, which I feel the government should look into the bigger aspect or the larger perspective, rather than you know the way they want to govern. It's going to bring in a lot of unrest, a lot of protests, and the society in general, especially the ethnicity values, or these minorities are never going to accept such kind of governance.
Thanks, Deep. You've touched on quite a few really vital, important issues. I'm going to pick on one of them for now. Professor Pritam Singh has written, in fact, one of his recent articles was regarding MSP, and another one explained how the new laws will legalize the control by agribusiness in terms of speculative hoarding, privatization, armed security, private rail networks, like so on and so forth. It has been reported that some of this has been happening for quite a while, even before the BJP took over. So, Professor, if you could talk about what was the origin of this corporate model, when did it, and how far deep are we already into this somewhat unwelcome situation?
Yeah, that's a very good point to consider. That Manmohan Singh regime brought the economic reforms, neoliberal economic reforms in 1991 when he was a finance minister. And one thing which I want to also bring to your notice is that big economic reforms are always ushered in a period of crisis. Crisis might be economic, it may be political, or in this case, it was a health crisis. And in 1991, there was a huge balance of payment crisis, and new government had come in. IMF and World Bank intervene whenever there is a crisis, because things are in flux. So you introduce a new measure. And similarly, neoliberal economic reforms were introduced in 1991 in a similar fashion. No consultation with the states, no discussion, no planning commission discussion, no national development commission, no interstate panel discussion. State were implemented that, but it was mainly in the domain of industry, and in order to increase export competitiveness of industry. So that is the common link between the two, that both are using an emergency to push forward a economic policy regime which they know is going to be controversial. But the agriculture sector wasn't touched during the Manmohan Singh regime. But the people who are now advocating that the same thing should be done in agriculture were also active during Manmohan Singh's regime. For example, Ashok Gulati, who is the chief spokesman of demolishing MSP, opening everything to international trade, making it more competitive. And when they say competitive, we should understand what it means. Competitive means decreasing the prices of agricultural commodities so that exports from India can be increased. Okay, that's the purpose of competitiveness. So when the government says that the purpose of these reforms is to give a better price to farmers, it clashes with this competitiveness. Competitiveness demands that prices should be lowered. Okay, so there is a complete lie behind this. The economic logic behind these reforms is to decrease the prices so that the India can become competitive in the agriculture market, agriculture export market. So therefore, there is a complete contradiction between what the government says and what it wants to do through these reforms. So, but the hold of big capitalist class in India is nothing new. It started right from the independence movement. Mahatma Gandhi was very close to Purushottam Das Tandon, to Birlas, to Bajaj, and he virtually lived in Birla's umbrella. He died in a Birla Mandir, which is an atrocity. I mean, to name a Mandir after a capitalist, and just think about if Mandir, if a Gurdwara was called Badal Gurdwara, what an atrocity it will be. And so the closeness of the capitalist class to India's Congress Party has been from the very beginning, and that has continued. So what is happening now is that they are extending that neoliberal economic reforms to agriculture. On top of that, it is a new kind of nationalism. The nationalism of the Congress was also one nation nationalism, that India should be one nation. Nehru was a great believer in that, that linguistic identity at start should not matter. That's why Punjabi Suba demand was given after long struggle, after 20-year struggle. And he was very, very reluctant to give. Only after Andhra Pradesh was created, after Gujarat was created, it became difficult to deny. But the thing is that during Nehruvian regime, though there was a Hindu bias in the constitution, though there was a Hindu bias in the Congress party, but the aim was not to build a Hindu nation. So what is happening now is that the BJP is continuing with economic policy, further extending it to agriculture, and then converting India into a Hindu nation. And within that, the capitalist class to which the Congress party was also close has been narrowed down to just a small number of houses, mainly two houses, Adani and Abanis. That their purpose is that make them so strong that other capitalists cannot compete. And when they are strong, we are strong because they fund us. So this is a combination of three things: extension of the same economic reforms to agriculture, the building up of Hindu nationhood, and thirdly, a small coterie. And this is basically a building ground for fascism. When you look at the rise of fascism in Germany, that's what happened. Hitler was very close to a small group of very, very big conglomerates, and they will concentrate power within their hands. So they have the economic power, Hitler had the political power, and combine them together. And that's what is being done. But obviously, India has a very thriving democracy, which is a big challenge. And the farmers, therefore, are performing a historic task. I mean, sometimes people don't understand what the farmers are doing was also strengthening the force of democracy, which is very, very important. They are strengthening the force of pluralism. They are strengthening the forces of diversity. And they're also trying to weaken the attack on federalism. Strengthening of federalism is very important for democracy. Therefore, the struggle of the farmers is against the policies which were earlier dormant, but now has come out in the open in a new form for Hindu nationalist forum.
Yeah. Thanks, Professor. I mean, yeah, that's actually a good point for us to move to the current struggle. In fact, before we do that, we are all aware that the farmers or the farm unions have been fighting against the center or against the policies of the government for decades. In fact, some say 7 decades, but it's been a long time, which have been considered somewhat losing battles. Now, Deep, if you could outline your thoughts briefly on the historical struggles of our farmers and elaborate on the current agitation and how the current agitation might be or is different.
Yeah, I would start when the farmer unions have come into existence, I think around 1950, when the first farmer union have come into existence in this country. And, mostly the farmer unions, to protect farmers' interest, at that point of time, to fight on what kind of crop value in terms of later on in 1966 MSP started. that we are going to get. Also, they have local issues, local market issues to address, which they used to address to the local authorities of uh, of a particular region. It might be a district authority, might be a state authority, but never been, at such never been a situation where they are actually fighting the state in itself. So the farmer union, first, I think Professor Saab would elaborate more on it because he would be little more in touch with that era and has an extensive study regarding how the farmer unions have progressed all this while from last 5-6 decades. But I would come to when I joined in, and I would come to today's struggle, what we are doing and how it is different from the struggles before. Because, see, first of all, I would uh, definitely give credit to the farmer union leaders because they've identified an issue. See, it's very important when you identify an issue and start some kind of agitation or some kind of protest against it. And for that, you'll have to also uh, have your narrative and throw it onto your own people so that they can come and be a part of it. So they show solidarity. So that's what has happened. It started from Punjab mainly. It started from few districts first, but then within a matter of days, when you saw such kind of diverse participation, it became such a such a huge issue that it became an international issue. Now the whole world is looking at the farmers over here. So the credit goes to the farmer union leaders, no doubt about it, that they've identified an issue, and there is potential that it became a global issue. It has global significance today. The significance is not just local. So the entire, I would say, geopolitics and the global politics can probably change from here, which we will see in the coming time. So the importance and the significance and why it is different from the earlier struggles, like Professor Saab has already explained, see, there are three reasons that we are fighting for. One, definitely it is the current, scenario of the situation or the kind of circumstances farmers are dealing with. They are the debt, they are committing suicide. There is ecological literacy, environmental threat because they've ignored that. So the existing model of agriculture, whether it is Punjab centric model or it is in Haryana or other parts of the country, that in itself has failed. That needs a major reform. That needs a reform in terms of considering local, like what I'm stressing upon time and again, that ecological literacy, because in India we have such diverse conditions in terms of how the soil behaves, in terms of how people behave, their lifestyle. Everything is so different. It's out and open that they want to make this country as Hindu Rashtra. So what about the minorities? What about, see, you're only serving the majority, and that majority is also created. It's actually not a majority, and that we all know how it has been created. That's again a separate discussion which we can have later. But if today the created majority has been, and that too just to central India, if that has been so that has been considered and you're serving their interest, what about the minorities living in this country? They are going to feel threatened in terms of their existence, in terms of their regional identity. So that is the second reason that they policy where they want to create this one nation, one market, one language. Everything is just monolithic. So that's a nation building process. That's how they understand it, which in itself is wrong. That is the second reason. Third reason, which we also have to consider, that which we were discussing, that the policy making in this country should be in the hand of the state, which is the federal structure of the federal system. But the unitary form of government have concentrated the entire power in their hands. and it flows from Delhi. So every policy is made from Delhi, which again is wrong in such a diverse country. So when you see these three reasons, you'll understand why it has become that we were talking about, like I was part of Shambu Morcha when we started this protest, though it was a little different than what the farmer union leaders were saying at that point of time. We were talking about that it is our existence crisis. So that's why our existence crisis today, if they're going to come and dominate by way of your policy, which you are introducing, our lifestyle, our civilization, which is got evolved over a period of centuries, and today you're going to just change the entire flow of it or restructure it or redefine it. We are not going to accept it. We are not going to sit down and just accept the way you probably are going to um, implement these policies. So we started raising our voice. And that's why, if you see today, be it educationists, doctors, teachers, farmers, definitely they're the first ones to identify it, singers, people from entertainment field, intellectuals, everyone is part of it. Everyone is protesting. So it's gone nationwide, wide, and we've seen that, that uh, the protests in San Francisco, in Toronto, in Vancouver, in London. The whole of London was at standstill, and I mean, even in Australia. So you see that that's why it is so different, because it's become a crisis not only for the farmers but also for regional identities, as well as the way it is going to affect day-to-day life of every citizen here. So that's why it's become the kind of agitation it has become. So this is what I would say. Rest, I also want Dr. Pritam Singh
Yeah,
to add to it. He'll have
yeah.
he'll have
I
a
think, yeah, I think 2 points which Deep has mentioned do need to be stressed. One, the international dimension, and the second about the importance of agriculture, or less, because this struggle has brought into attention the question of agriculture. The old developmental models all are based on this, that economic development comes through industrialization, and industrialization leads to increase in GDP. Increase in GDP leads to increase in per capita income. Increase in per capita income leads to happiness. That is what growth is. That is, in a very simplified form, the economists have been taught. And in order to do that industrialization, agriculture has to be destroyed, and the agricultural labor force must be moved to the cities, to the urban areas for industrialization. And to that extent, this is a model which is shared both by the right wing, those who stand for capitalism, but also the old style left. I would not say the new style left. I belong to the new style left. I belong to ecological socialist thought, that in Russia also under Stalin, they did collectivization, demolish the peasantry, calling them kulaks. So this is being questioned. This is being questioned. I'm a part of that international group of economists who are questioning that development model, that no, we have to abandon that. GDP is not the end of life. Increasing per capita income and consumerism is not the end of life. Okay? And that is important also from ecological point of view. We are at a stage in human history where our existence as Earth planet is under stress. The degree at which global warming is increasing, global heating is increasing, I would say, and the biodiversity loss which is taking place, that within 10 years, if the global temperature rises more than 1.5 degree compared to the pre-industrial age, there will be irreversible damages. And for that, we need to have ecological policies. And central to that ecological policies is saving agriculture, because agriculture means relationship with the land, relationship with nature. And central to that is the protection of small farmers. India has 86% farmers which are marginal or small farmers. The new development strategy which India has to be based on making these 86% farmers economically and ecologically sustainable. Okay, and that's why this struggle is important. It is important from an international viewpoint, not only because NRIs are participating, that is also important, but also global developmental agenda, and that questioning the old paradigm of economics, questioning the old paradigm of development, questioning the old paradigm of happiness through per capita income, questioning the paradigm of happiness lying in consumerism, trying to build a new vision of life. And that means overthrowing capitalism. Capitalism has to be overthrown. Capitalism is destructive because capitalism is based on the notion of profitability. Whether it is land or water or forest or mines, the capital looks at this each of those sources from the viewpoint of exploitation. Therefore, capitalism is essentially ecologically destroying system. But we don't want to change this with an old style, Stalinist type of socialism. We want to build a new vision of ecological socialism. And that vision, small farming, has to be very important. That small farmers who are autonomous, as a nice word which Deep used, who have a different way of relating to land, who are ecologically sustainable, and they can also live happily. We have to construct a new definition of happiness. Now, these issues I'm starting to raise, through articles and so on and so forth within the farmers movement, but we will have to take it in a much major way. And we'll have to think about regeneration of Punjab. And we have a problem of casteism in Punjab. And Sikhism teaches us to treat all human beings equally. But Jat Sikhs do not treat the Dalit Sikhs, in a way which Sikhi teaches us. And now those barriers are being broken, but we need to take them further. We need to have a unity between the agriculture workers and the farmers and end this caste discrimination. Therefore, this agitation, this struggle is important from this angle, questioning a certain model of development and posing a new model of development. It is not only the farm laws, it's not only the MSP, it's not only the APMC, they are important, but beyond that there is something else. And those issues will become much more important after this agitation is successful. Hopefully it will be successful. There is no way out. Government can repress this movement.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for in the more important, the larger issues connected with this whole farmer struggle. It seems Punjab or the farmers, in fact, not just Punjab, Haryana and nearby regions, they have taken a lead towards this. But we do know that agriculture is more or less, or I should say farmers are more or less suffering all over the world, including North America, actually. And most of Europe too. In France, we hear about similar protests, but they kind of...
That's because all this is based on that model. The agriculture has to be destroyed. And that's what I was saying, that it's everywhere. It's a global phenomenon.
Exactly. In India, the government machinery has been in full gear along with the establishment media. But there's a perception that the PR seems to be losing ground. Is this perception real? In fact, Deep, if you could contribute to it as well after the professor, what conditions may have allowed the apparent success of the farmers' counterpoint this time?
Well, I think Deep knows more because he's on the ground. But I would think from an international viewpoint, for the first time, the big international corporations and the governments are looking at India with suspicion. Earlier, there was a celebration of India. They even ignored the Gujarat massacre of 2002. Okay, and people have forgotten about 1984. But they're now looking back. India is not that what we thought about. There was a mythology of India. There was a romanticism of India. I meet friends, who said, "Oh, we went to India in 1960. It's a land where the Beatles went, and it's spiritualism." And all. Some people still carry this, but gradually that image is changing. Yes. Okay, and that is affecting the government. That the image of India is not the India of peaceful, harmony and taking care and close to nature and so on and so forth. And that is a pressure on the government, or international level. And that is one of the consequences of the success of the farmers' movement. That it has been a peaceful movement, very enlightened leadership, amazingly articulate leadership. The farmers are considered to be literate, but this leadership is so good. Balbir Singh Rajewar alone can defeat an army of bureaucrats who assist the government in terms of understanding the law, instead of intricacies of the economic policy. He alone is able to demolish all of them. And then there are others who are equally brilliant with them. So, so this has been one of the successes from international point of view. Deep knows more about the ground, so he can tell us.
Yeah, Deep, if you may.
See, I think in the Indian history, this agitation and the protest, uh, I think has, like I said, uh, I think it's never been seen. That's what we've been hearing, and even during independence, this kind of mobilization never took place. So during independence struggle. So today, if we look at it, see, there are various reasons. There are local reasons, there are national reasons, and there are international reasons. And like Professor was, also pointing out from the international point of view. But see, locally, when I say, we have this diversity in this country, whether it is cultural diversity or biodiversity, people are really the way we belong to our cultural diversity or biodiversity, that belonging factor, that sense of belonging is really, really strong. And that is not only in Punjab, but every part of the country. So we successfully have invoked that emotion, and people started relating to the agitation, and they understand this fact that is a regional importance, which identification, which they are talking about, is very, very important. And that's one factor which contributes towards the universalism. Universalism is not that you become one and the homogeneous kind of society is made. Universalism is actually where diversities are protected and their identity, diverse identity, uh, are contributing when they hold their own distinct identity, and that contributes to the universalism, and that makes this earth beautiful, this universe beautiful. Now, another thing which I would say, the, the political ideology which Delhi or the BJP has been promoting, it had its success, and in the central part of the country, definitely they have their lot of support even existing even today. But all over the country, if I would say, if you go down south, or if you go to West Bengal, or if you go northeast side, or you come towards north, it's losing its ground. Now they're coming out of that delusion is breaking, because they're understanding that this is not how a nation can be built, and a nation like India, where there is such kind of diverse cultural existence we have. Thirdly, the kind of diverse participation is there. See how you throw your narrative, and how you get people and mobilize such a large number of people, because your narrative has to have substance, and it has to be so strong that they start relating to it. So when I said that we have now, earlier whenever there was farmer agitation, there were only farmers and they were probably protesting. Today we have intellectuals, we have educationists, we have doctors, we have teachers, we have social workers, we have such diverse participation that the voice is spreading, the narrative is spreading. Now the whole world is talking about what that we are asking for our rights. And the most important thing was that it stayed peaceful. See, that's the great strength today. State, what always they would do, if there is any kind of element which is anti-social element, then state, to protect their national integrity, they would use their own, forces to snub it. And they would call it that we've done it in the nation's interest, but we've not given them a chance. And it's actually a miracle. That's why I always go and talk about that some superpower, and Akal Purkh Waheguru is actually helping us to make this peaceful, such kind of peaceful protest. And people are in order, the kind of brotherhood they've shown, the kind of spirit they've shown, it's phenomenal. So, so these are the aspects that whatever propaganda or the government started, I mean, whatever they wanted to propagate, they were linking it with urban Naxalites, they were linking it with Khalistanis, they were linking it with, that the left, it is an agitation where the left is controlling, and it's the left perspective. Everything has been destroyed. So, that's why there's such kind of support across the globe. And that's it clearly, I mean, I would say the credit goes to the farmers, how they, they've got, I mean, they've, like I said, identified the issue, and how they've clubbed everything together, and they welcomed everyone from every profession and from every trade, and then welcomed with both hands that come and join us and understand what we are trying to say. And like I said, in today's time, if it is peaceful, we can achieve anything which we desire for.
Yeah, I think that's the last point which you mentioned, but pluralism is certainly extremely important, that there are different political tendencies within the farmers union. Some are inspired by
Yes,
religious vision, others are inspired by left, but the way they have been able to come together, that is a
yes,
lesson to the whole world. That
absolutely.
doesn't matter when your aim is similar, you might have a different motivation, different inspiration, different ideology, but you can work together. And also this Hindu Muslim Hindu Sikh thing has gone away, and Haryana people have welcomed the farmers of Punjab with open hands, offering their houses for the ladies to come and visit them, and so on and so forth. It has been amazing from that point of view, totally opposed to the Hindu nationalist narrative, and that is the strength of this movement, that it has led to new modes of thinking. It has given a hope. It has given a hope also from another angle, that before this, any agitation which came against this government was crushed. This is the first agitation in which people have been able to overcome fear. They're openly challenging the government, openly making mockery out of them. They're creating cartoons, they're creating films, openly shouting slogans, and the government cannot do a thing to them. They would not have tolerated that even 2 years back. So that is the strength, that the fear has gone. People are feeling strength in themselves. People have a sense of self-confidence. And that is what a democracy should. That people should have a sense of self-worth. They should have a sense of self-respect. We can change. And that is what will lead to the victory of this struggle.
Yes, I would add to it that, Professor, if you actually, if anybody wants to experience the democratization, or, which I would call it true democracy, and a pious relationship between different political ideologies, between religious ideologies, you should come and visit this agitation. All the, I mean, every rivalry has been melted, no egos, definitely, the kind of, like I said, the spirit and the brotherhood everyone is shown, it's phenomenal. It's so inspiring that we come here and we become a different human being, in terms of we grow as a human being. So it's really pious. So yeah, that's another reason to it, that that till today, that we are successfully, what we want to achieve, we are actually going towards it.
Exactly.
I think the important point, where Deep was saying about at the end, is that this new inspiration and sense of solidarity and democracy, the challenge would be to carry those values afterwards. How we lead to new creation, how to create a new Punjab, to come over all those petty past and small mentalities, and emerge as new human beings. Creation of a new man, as many revolutionaries say that. That will be a big challenge that we need to carry, and it should not happen that the movement succeeds and then we go back to the same old ways. That will be a tragedy, and there people like people have a role to play through their art and culture to carry on that spirit.
Yeah. The consequences of returning empty-handed are going to be like really grave. Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about empty-handed. I'm saying that even if you win the victory, okay, even if it was a withdrawn, and then you go back and you start saying back in the same style of life, that will be a very partial victory. That will be a very limited victory. Victory will be if we are able to carry the values which are being manifested during the struggle back to our lives.
Yeah, point.
That's right. See, that's why we talk about character erosion, and then we'll have to work on our characters. And that's, has to be some kind of a source of inspiration, or source of, I would say, that's why I believe in Akal Purkh Waheguru. So that's what I would say, some kind of divine intervention, where we have to probably whatever has been manifested here, those values we carry it back, and build a new Punjab, and build a new Haryana, or build the whole region, and start differently. So that's the challenge, but we'll accept that, and then we'll work on it, and we'll definitely work on it in terms of that we, whatever way,
Yes.
whether it is Gurbani or it is some other
ab-
other phenomena, and
yeah.
then change their way of thinking and their way of living, so that
Yeah.
consumerism or the material is not ruling their lives, or it's not
That's right.
defining their lives. There are
Yes.
more human values to it. There is human angle to it, and the way they belong to each other, that should be relooked into, and that should change.
I mean, in the other very important, I mean, maybe we should be finishing that the Sikh farmers have played the vanguard. I'm using the word cautiously because vanguard can be misunderstood, providing leadership. Because in every moment there are unevenness. Some elements are more advanced than others. They have provided leadership, and the whole image of the Sikhs have changed. Okay, in the
Absolutely.
country, Sikhs are being looked upon kind people who care about others. It's the langar which defines them. It's not AK-47 anymore, and that they are fearless, but they're also gentle. And this new image which has been created, they have become the vanguard. I would say that they should become vanguard in changing the world. That
Absolutely.
what we have achieved now, we can also
Yes.
show the world. And there are people.
Absolutely.
I mean, people are. Every day I have requests from countries which one does not even know, asking for an interview. Someone from Slovenia contacted me the other day that can we have an interview on the radio? I was too busy. I said I can't, and they asked me for someone else, and I passed on to someone else whether the person will. Amazed. Small country which had no don't Sikhs there, not even Indians there. They're interested because they're looking up to this. That what a
Right.
movement. So that I would say that's the inspiration from our gurus. And gurus have created us as new human beings who have that courage, who are able to withstand. That we should carry
Well,
in us. That we should be the vanguard of creating a new world.
of the humanity, and that's what of the nature, in fact, the
Yeah.
universe. So
That's
that's what that's the kind of principle they've given us, and that's what Khalsa is all about, and that's what Sikhism is all about. It's not present within probably boundaries or within certain limits. So it's actually about universe. It's actually about the entire universe, and it's
yeah,
it's about to preserve and protect bio and cultural diversity the way it is. So
absolutely.
that's how I
No,
define
absolutely
Sikhism.
agree. That is a vision which we should carry back.
Yeah,
When we win, and I'm sure we will win.
Yeah. I think really,
we will.
really very noble thoughts at the end. I would just add besides not just Sikhs or Muslims, Hindus, I would include believers, non-believers, everybody, because
Yeah,
we are human,
yeah,
and that
Yeah,
soul,
yeah,
whatever you might want to call it, it's in every
yeah,
one of us. So we
yeah.
are nearing the end. So I'll just have one little thought that in science we like to, to get a complete picture, we like to look at stuff really closely and then from afar. And luckily, we have Deep, who's my microscope, I would say, and Dr. Pritam Singh is giving information from a telescope and from a much longer time period as well. And if you have a concluding statement, you may, Professor Pritam Singh first, and then Deep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harbinder, for organizing this, and very nice to meet Deep. And even if it is through internet, and hopefully we'll keep in touch. And the sharing of these views, and I think that this discussion has been very useful in untangling the various aspects why these formulas were brought, and how the protests to these formulas have created a new movement, new ideas, new inspiration, and new visions for life. And that's what we need to carry forward more than simple victories, which are also important. That we have much bigger mission, and that is what has aroused in us, which we need to carry forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Deep.
yes, I would say that it's amazing to meet both of you, and then like Dr. Pritam Singh said that it's through internet, but we'll keep in touch, and this is historic what is happening over here, and it has global significance, like I said. So we'll have to take a lot from it. We have to learn a lot from it, It's inspirational. The vibration is so pure. So let's work on it together. Let's work on it as a team and have have a really constructive future, which we can probably give it to the generations to come. Where people from every profession, they want to participate and they want to contribute in a positive way. So let's all work as a team, and work to create a better world, I would say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deep. Thank you. But do stay safe. You're right in the middle of it. Thank you, gentlemen.